today's program on first generation law students and recruiting. This is our part of our week-long programming with our Need to Know series. So thank you all for coming. I would like to take this moment to thank our speakers, our alumni who've joined us today, taking time out of their very busy schedules to be with us. I'm going to start by introducing each of our speakers and ask them to tell us a little bit about themselves and their backgrounds. So I'd like to start with Christina Calabrese from the class of 2005. Christina, would you like to start us off today?
Sure thing. Good morning or afternoon, everyone. My name is Christina Calabrese. I currently work for Letitia James in the Office of the New York State Attorney General. I am an Assistant Attorney General in the Claims Bureau, where I defend tort actions in the Court of Claims on behalf of all of our state agencies.
Thank you, Christina. Justina Cintron-Perino from the class of, I gotta check my notes, 2000. Justina, will you introduce yourself and let us know a little bit about you?
Absolutely. As you said, class of 2000, so I am the oldest panelist today. Youngest out. I currently serve as the principal law clerk to the Honorable Kimberly A. O'Connor. She's an acting Supreme Court Justice appointed to the Court of Claims here in Albany County. I've been with her for 15 years. I'm her principal clerk, her career clerk. Prior to that, I actually worked at the law school for more than 6 years in the Government Law Center, doing various things. And that's pretty much the background. My career is pretty varied. I've been both in the public and private sector.
Thank you so much, Justina. And our newest graduate from the class of 2020, who had to not only, endure so many changes, including a global pandemic, I'd like to introduce Charlene Joseph. Charlene is from the class of 2020, as I mentioned.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Charlene Joseph, Albany alum, class of 2020. I'm an associate at the firm Rosario Timber PC, located in the financial district in New York City. I've been with the firm for about a year now, and my caseload primarily consists of insurance defense, commercial litigation, real estate transactions, and employment law matters. So I do litigation and transactional work. On the litigation front, I do heavy research and motion drafting, and on the transactional matters, I do a lot of contract drafting and negotiating settlement agreements.
Thank you so much, Charlene. So we wanted to have a conversation today about being a first-generation law student. There's been a lot of conversations around this topic, and we thought it would be a great idea to have our alums join us, alums from all different years, to tell us about their experiences as first-generation law students and for some as first-generation college students. I'd like to keep this as conversational as possible, so students, if you have any questions, you can feel free to raise your hands, unmute, put something in the chat. Meg is going to monitor the chat for me, or if you'd like, you can send me a direct message if you don't want to put it in the chat for everyone to see. It is completely up to you. So please feel free to jump on at any moment if you had a question. So I'd like to start by asking our panelists about their experience during law school as a first-generation law student. Tell us a little bit about your background, if you're a first-generation law student or college student, and also what challenges you faced being the first one in your family to go to law school. So, Justina, would you like to start us off with this one?
Absolutely. So I am a first-generation, believe it or not, high school student in my family. I'm also a first-generation college and first-generation lawyer. So a lot of firsts, which I think for me, one of the biggest things that I was trying to think about in terms of entering law school was just a learning curve. I think that there's a very big learning curve as a first generation in understanding really what law school is, other than sort of the more typical or traditional things that people may tell you about. And that was really eye-opening and something that I didn't expect when I got there and really had to kind of figure out. So navigating that path, learning what law school was, what first year was going to look like. I remember back all the years ago that I started, orientation was 3 days. And really, when we arrived, they had a number of activities for us. There were a couple of lectures. They had us meet for a couple of mixers. We picked up our books. We learned a little bit about the law school, and then off we were to the first class. And when I looked around and I saw a lot of students knew each other, they talked about professors in the school. They had a sense of how things worked, and I had no idea. And I thought I was an intelligent person. I could figure it out, but not having someone to really talk to about what that first day was going to look like, what that first week would look like, what classes were going to be like, was very difficult. So I felt very much at a deficit, and I felt that there was a lot to learn. And it was very intimidating, I have to be honest. Very intimidating trying to figure out how to even navigate understanding the process and not feeling like if I ask questions, I'm going to look like I don't know something, or I'm not intelligent enough, or I shouldn't be here. So those were some of the things that came to mind when I thought, when I first started, and how I felt, and, where my place was. And that's sort of where I came from.
Thank you for sharing that with us. Charlene, would you like to share your background and as a first generation law student, and some of the challenges that you faced as a more of a newer graduate as well?
Sure. So I am a first generation law student. I wasn't a first generation college student. Both my parents had earned bachelor's degrees. So they were able to give me some insight as I was entering into college, kind of how to plan things out, what to expect. But when it came to law school, it was very new to all of us. And I was more so educating them as I went along. I think I remember just moving to Albany, and I didn't know anyone in the area. I'd never met the students before. And just throughout that first week, I could see that a lot of students were just a lot more comfortable than I was. And especially in my lawyering classes, you could hear students talking about, all the law books that they'd read over the summer, how they're getting into their readings for classes. And I found it a little bit more difficult to navigate through all of that, especially being away from home. I just felt really out of the norm. I think that was probably the most challenging for me, because I was trying to fit in, but I realized that we had different backgrounds and different experiences. And I was more so at another edge of the learning curve, as Justina had said. So that was pretty challenging for me, but eventually I found my way to work through it. Definitely after the first semester, getting a grasp of how everything was supposed to go and feeling a little bit more comfortable with my course load, I started to feel like I could catch up.
Thank you so much for sharing that. I'm sure walking in feeling like everybody else has these connections that you may not have can be very overwhelming. Christina, can you share your background and your story with us?
Absolutely. So I am a first generation law student and first generation college student. I did not receive much support from family throughout my college experience and my law school experience. So I was really kind of out on my own from a very young age. I tell people a funny story that, and while I'm an officer of the court now and a lawyer, I'm still not embarrassed to share this kind of truth about myself. I remember when I was 13, I chalked my license or my ID card to say that I was 14 so that I could get a job in our local mall growing up on Long Island, because I needed money to pay for things, and I wasn't getting that kind of support that I give to my children these days, and you hear about a lot of other families giving to their children. So from a very young age, I realized that if there's anything in life I wanted to do, I needed to do it on my own. So going into law college and then law school was difficult because I didn't have a support system. It was really just me. And in looking at some of the topics that we are going to discuss today, a resounding theme to me was something called imposter syndrome. And I highly recommend all of you Google it because it's a thing, it's real. And it faces a lot of successful women and also successful men. It's something that essentially it makes you feel as though you're not good enough. Like, oh my gosh, yes, I have a law degree, and yes, I have a college degree, and yes, I've been working for all these years, but one of these days my boss is going to figure out I'm not as good as they think I am, and I'm an imposter. And so I think feeling like an imposter is something inherent in me because of my background and not having the support, the family support or the community support, growing up, and not coming from a family of lawyers, not coming from a family of judges, not knowing anybody who was a lawyer growing up, not knowing anybody who was a judge growing up. I didn't have those experiences. So feeling as though I'm an outsider was something very familiar to me. And that really bleeds and blends into the imposter syndrome. And I can tell you it's something that you have to recognize is real, accept the fact that these may be feelings you have for your whole life, but continue to tell yourself you are good enough. You did work hard, you are successful, and just keep reminding yourselves of those tenets. I can tell you that after I graduated law school, I worked in a public defender's office and then in a private law firm for a short time. And after that, worked for a very long time in a DA's office as a prosecutor, and then continued that path as a prosecutor before I came here to OAG in 2015 and have been here ever since. So it's very obvious that I'm successful in my career. Notwithstanding that, notwithstanding the fact that I look at it on paper, you still have these kind of nagging thoughts in the back of your head that, what if I'm not as good as everybody thinks I am? And that, I think, comes from not having the support that some of our colleagues were lucky enough to have growing up and lucky enough to have throughout, their career in college and in law school. Just being able to go to somebody and say, hey, I have all these briefs due, and have them understand what you mean by that and understand what you mean when you talk about being stressed out around finals time and stressed out about the bar exam. Having somebody be able to commiserate with that experience of yours is so valuable. And for people like me and some of the others on the panel who didn't have that, that's difficult. You really lose out on having that camaraderie and that kind of safety net of somebody who understands your experience. So my advice would be that you reach out to people like us, use us as a contact, use us as a connection. I manage the intern program here at the office, and to this day, I stay in touch with interns that I've had 15 years ago. So make connections with people who you feel understand you and have similar backgrounds as you, and stick close with them and use them as the person that some of our colleagues use as their mother, their father, their brother, or their sister. You make connections with those in your legal community who you can rely on to be that surrogate mother, father, brother, sister, who can share their experience with you in the way that some of our colleagues, family, and friends share with them.
That was great, Christina. Thank you so much. And you've brought up so many good points about the support system that some people have coming into law school, and some people, aren't, as fortunate. So you mentioned, financially you were on your own, So when you came to law school, did you have to work, talk about the financial burden that law school brought, and how that, may have affected your ability to, participate in extracurricular activities, or, did you understand what the extracurricular activities were, their importance of doing them, and can you talk a little bit about what you did while you were in law school? So I'm going to start with Christina, since we're right there with her right now. So
I knew, like I mentioned, from an early age, if there was anything I wanted to do, I needed to do it on my own. And fortunately for me, I never let money stop me because I reached out to the financial aid offices. In law school, I always worked throughout college doing work study and side jobs and odd jobs and things like that. And in law school, I tried to work at a formal job. I think I tried to work at TGI Fridays and another restaurant, because that's what I did in college, waitress. But it really just was too much for me. I couldn't manage the set schedule with managing my class load and all of the reading assignments and just figuring out how to be a law student and how to be successful. That takes time in and of itself. So I was eligible for work study in law school. So I did work study. I also, this is funny because it kind of just gives you a glimpse of my personality when it comes to always being a worker and always working. I met somebody through the law. Justina worked in the career service department when I was there. And in her department, there was a list. I don't know if you remember this, Justina. There was a list of side jobs or odd jobs people in the community would post at the law school. And there was both of them were attorneys, and they needed their dogs walked every day. And they needed somebody to watch their dogs when they would go away for business because their main firm was in Texas. And so I did that. And that was another way for me to reach out to people in the community that weren't related to me or that I didn't know who were lawyers to kind of learn from them too. So I walked those dogs every day for almost 3 years of law school. And it was great because, it was cash and I was able to kind of pay for extra things. But really the bulk of my financial ability rested on financial aid. And that's scary, you guys. I can tell you to this day. So I am, full disclosure, I'm going to be 44 in November. I've been practicing law since it was admitted in May of 2005, or June of 2005. So I've been obviously working every day since then. I've never been without a job. And I couldn't afford to pay back my loans when I first got out of school. So I deferred them. So while I probably could have gotten the 10-year public service forgiveness before now, I haven't been able to because I wasn't paying into it. Now with President Biden, there's all of these changes happening. So it looks like I will be forgiven for a bulk of that amount in the next couple of years probably. But I say all of this to you and I kind of give you too much information about me because I don't want money to be the thing that stops you from doing anything in your life, ever. Money comes and money goes, and you'll see sometimes you'll be flush and sometimes you'll be down. But you should never, ever, ever let money control what it is that you want to do in your life. You'll find a way. The financial aid office will help you find a way if this is something that you want to do. And frankly, I think that when you're paying for it on your own and know, oh crap, when I'm 44, like that lady Christina, I may still be paying my college loans. I don't want to be like that. When you have that type of kind of pressure about money, you really invest yourself more in whatever commitment it is you're making, whether it's law school, whether it's a new car, whatever the case may be. So there will be a way. You'll figure it out with financial aid. They will help you. People like Justina, when I was a student, will help you find jobs, odd jobs, work, study. Don't ever let money ever in your life be a hindrance to you. Because if we did, a lot of us who come from nothing, I literally come from nothing. I had nothing growing up. Literally nothing. And I could go into that more at another time with you guys if you'd like, if you want to learn more about my background. But I could have let money be a stop sign, but I didn't. And look where I am today. I am one of those people who, has worked her whole life, is very successful. I have children, I have a husband, and I got all of this on my own. And I never let money stop me. So please, if you take one thing away from today, do not let money stop you from reaching your goals. We'll figure it out together if we have to, of how you can pay for things, but there is a way.
Thank you so much, Christina. And I think Christina really highlighted, our community here at Albany Law School, that she worked with the financial aid office and she, knew Justina, back in the day. Christina, we really do appreciate you sharing all of that with us. Justina, can you share a little bit about, about how, you came into law school and the support system and things that Christina had just touched on as well?
I feel like, honestly, Christina and I had a very similar experience. And, and I didn't mention this earlier, but very much the same in terms of not having to do things on my own. As you said that story, Christina, about chalking your ID, I will admit this, I lied about my age to get a job when I was in my early teens because I couldn't get the job unless I was 15 or 16 and I needed to work at this clothing store. Much like Christina, I had to pay for everything from as early as I can remember. We lived on subsidized housing. We lived on social services. I had a single mother who made $13,000 a year. There were 4 of us, and I had to work as soon as I could to pay for anything that I wanted to do in life. So I, like Christina, had to navigate all of those things on my own without guidance, without support, really without understanding, and not because family didn't want to. They just couldn't. They had a sense of how things worked, what made things happen, how college worked, how you even got to college. I remember filling out my FAFSA forms, which were all by hand back then. I'm the old one here, and I will admit I'm 47, just turned 47. But back then you handed things and you submitted them. We didn't even have, resources for figuring out financial aid and scholarship information. It was all via paper. And if you were lucky enough to have a good guidance counselor, and I didn't, you would get that information. So a lot of that you had to really be a go-getter. And all of us as first gens know that we are go-getters because that's the way that we have gotten to where we are. But with that being said, it was very challenging in law school. I like Charlene, when I came in, I didn't know anybody. I came to Albany Law sight unseen. I moved in dorms, if you can believe it. There were dorms back then, and lived with a group of individuals, some law students, some med students, tried to meet people and fit in. It was very difficult. I had to work first semester. I had to work first year. There was no option for me. Back then, financial aid was helpful, but I still didn't have everything I needed to live on. So there was a policy when I was in a first year that you shouldn't work. And it was I don't know if it was a written policy, an unwritten policy, but they didn't enforce it. So I didn't tell anybody. And I had a job and I tried to manage law school in the job and did terribly my first semester. The first time I ever did poorly in school my entire life, and felt like such a failure, and didn't have anyone to really talk to help me understand that trying to do both things was very difficult. To manage a full-time job and to manage full-time classes and do all of that and have energy and be willing and participatory and doing all the things that make a successful law student, trying to network and connect and find support, very, very difficult. So, but I learned, like Charlene, I figured things out that first semester in terms of how do I fit? Where do I fit? How can I make this work and do the things I need to do while being able to support myself, make money, and still, have good grades? And I figured it out, but it took some time and wonderful resources. Joanna's been somebody I've known for a very long time. And people like her at the law school were always available to me and willing to sit down and have conversations. Like Christina, I worked for several law professors. I babysat quite a bit and did many odd jobs in addition to regular work, but all of that helped to provide the financial support I needed to get me through law school. And I always managed, living with little means. You learn how to live with a lot less, and it's fine because you know what the goal is and where you need to be. So, I have to say it's a journey that was difficult, but one well worth every moment that I had and everything that I did and every challenge that I undertook and embraced and got through. You're just better for it. And there are ways to navigate this process, as Christina said. And there are many of us now out in the community so willing and wanting to help you do that. We didn't have back, all these years ago, these types of panels yet. They weren't even recognizing we were a group in need of help and in need of resources and opportunity and guidance and advice and support. It's coming, it's developing, it's around you, and you are now more connected than ever. I chuckle when I say, 20 plus years ago, we were not globally connected. We didn't all have cell phones and internet connections and social media and all of those things that are available now to give you the support, guidance, and resources that you need. And so you have a lot of that information at your fingertips, but you also have a lot of people available to you as well. So, keep moving forward. It will get better. Any challenge that you've faced, you can overcome. You are here. You are lawyers. You're going to be lawyers. And that takes a lot in and of itself to just get there. So I'm thrilled that I got to be on this panel and I can impart at least a little bit of information. And if it's helpful in any way, then I have done what I'd hoped to do today. So I'm looking forward to more of this and looking forward to even hearing from the students that are on this program today and ones that aren't, that reach out and say, I just need to chat about this. I have some information, or I'm looking for some advice and guidance. I am happy to give it in whatever way I can.
Thank you so much, Justina. We truly appreciate you sharing that. Charlene, can you tell us a little bit, were there any, I don't want to say obstacles or anything that you brought with you to the law school that you felt, that you had to overcome or work on while you were a student, when you came in as a first generation law student?
Just similar to just briefly bounce back from the topic of just having financial obligations outside of just being a law student. I came in and my education was funded primarily through financial aid in the terms of loans and whatever my scholarship amount was. And every opportunity that I had to appeal that scholarship in order to have more money, I did so. And I was working throughout all of law school except for that first semester. I remember second semester, I worked in the bookstore, I did work study, and I only chose summer or applied for summer internships that were paid simply because I could not afford to sit there and work for an entire summer and not be paid, because whatever that money went to, it was for the next semester, it was for books and anything else that I needed. So consistently, I remember just working from there. I worked in the library as well. And I remember going from an internship in the day to class at night to the closing shift in the library, and it was on repeat. So I knew that I had to figure it out in terms of financially in order to keep going through school. It is a huge investment that you literally cannot go back on, and that forces you to really put your all into it. And you know that at the end of the day, you do have loans that are on the line, but it's all going to be worth it because the career that you're choosing in the long run. So financially, of course, that was an obstacle because, had I had more free time and, the resources to just pay for school, that could have been dedicated more towards studying or anything else. But at the end of the day, you do figure out how to make it work. And, when you have these types of obstacles, you just need to know, what do you have to do to navigate it, to plan accordingly, to make sure that your schedule aligns to the point where you can continue to pour into the commitment of classes and everything else that goes with that, and internships and professional development, along with just getting by on the day-to-day.
Yeah. And if I can just, Joanne, I just want to jump into something Charlene just mentioned. If you have these obstacles, know you're not the only one, and know you're not the first one, right? So if Charlene, Justina, and I have gone through a similar experience, as it seems like what many of you may be going through, you should reach out to people like us or the Career Center or the Financial Aid Center, because obviously they have thousands of students who have gone before you, right? And probably have encountered every problem that you have many times before. So just don't ever feel like you're alone, is my point in saying that, because you're not alone, right? It's not the first time somebody's had that problem, and it's not going to be the last time. You just need the tools to be able to figure out how to overcome that problem. And you should reach out to people who have these tools already within themselves, who can share them with you, so you're not kind of recreating the wheel, right? Oh, you need to work, but you can't because, like Justina said, we were not forbidden, but it was frowned upon to work for a semester. But you're like Charlene and you need to work. Okay, well, let me talk to, for example, Christina, and she'll tell me how she was able to walk dogs every day, or how she was able to house sit or babysit on the weekends. There's all of these opportunities out there that aren't traditional forms of work, that pay very well and will give you cash money to help you pay for groceries, because financial aid pays for only so much, right? It doesn't really give you money to eat. It doesn't necessarily give you money to pay your cell phone bill and things that are kind of necessities, or needs, not wants in our lives, like cell phone bills. So there are ways to overcome these obstacles. You guys just don't know how to do it yet, maybe because you haven't had that experience. So lean on your community members, lean on the law school community, lean on attorneys in your community, like the three of us now, who can help you and guide you through that process. And that's all it takes, is reaching out, you guys. I did put my contact information in the chat, so feel free to contact me at any time after today, throughout your career. I love talking to students. I work with students a lot, and it's my honor, frankly, to be able to help students and guide them as they're law students and as they become young lawyers.
Thank you so much, Christina. And I'm sure Justina and Charlene feel the same way, but I can provide you with their contact information as well. And I wanted to thank Ken, who's on the call. He's an LLM student who also is first generation, and shared, with us that he also, had to fudge his ID to do some work at a young age as well. And Hannah just wanted to add that something a lot of people talk about, that they don't know about is that their work study eligibility, you qualify for SNAP food benefits, which is great to know. Hannah, thank you for sharing that, because I know that the
Yeah.
financial burden is something that, students bring with them, with them to law school. And I appreciate all of you sharing these stories with us. And Christina, you had mentioned the imposter syndrome, which is something that is very real. I look at the three of you and I see three very successful, confident, accomplished women that I am so proud that I know as well as I do. And I'm sure you don't always feel that way, and I'm sure when you were in law school you didn't always feel that way. And we're about to embark on interviews. Students are about to start interviewing, next month. And I'm sure you all remember back then, how do you feel, when you were interviewing as a first generation law student? Did you feel as though that you were disadvantaged compared to your peers who might have come from a family of lawyers? Or did you feel as though, that whether then or now, that you were able to talk about everything that you've overcome, everything that you've achieved, or did you feel like that was more taboo? So, Charlene, I'm going to have you start us off. And Ken, I know you had your hand raised, so I'm going to finish this round of questions and I'm going to get right back to you, Ken.
Yes, so to address that, yes, I do feel like there was a disadvantage in terms of interviewing and applying. I took the typical route because I don't have family members. I don't have a mom, a dad, an aunt, uncle who is, a partner at a law firm or owns a law firm that I can just intern there for the summer and not even have to worry about submitting applications. Me, I went on Indeed, I went on the Career Links website and I applied and applied until I got something. And when my interview did come up, I took the standard approach of reviewing my resume so I knew it front to back. Just Googling certain questions that would be asked during the interview and practicing my responses, looking up the firm's website to make sure that I got a good understanding of the background, the culture of the firm, the type of practice areas that they have. So that was my approach to interviewing. However, it was different for a lot of other students. I remember particularly it was the summer I just finished my 1L year and I was taking some summer courses, me and a couple of my classmates. And we went to the library one day and I asked them, what are you doing? And they said, oh, we're applying to summer internships. And I said, it's already summertime. What are you talking about? And they said, we're applying for next summer. And I said, that's really far in advance. And they're like, well, that's how the process goes. And I said, so let me look at, some of the firms that you're applying to. And I saw the list, the criteria that they asked for. And of course, they want the top 10 or top 15%. They wanted you to be in moot court. They wanted you to be in journal. And as a 1L, we weren't allowed to do these activities. It was only the top 15%. But after you finish your 1L year, your GPA is very much established because of those heavy credit and bar courses that are taken in that first year. So I'm looking at these criteria and I said, you know what, Charlene, you're not checking these boxes yet. And from then on, I moved throughout my law school career to say, never again. You have to check all of those boxes that the employers are looking for. These are hardcore establishes that you need to meet. And so from then on, I joined the journal. I did the writing competition. I joined the journal. And I joined moot court and I won 2 competitions, client counseling and negotiations. And moving forward, I always went on to every semester, give it my best, go to office hours, change my study habits to make sure that I improve my GPA to get to a point that maybe even if I'm not in the top 10, top 15%, my GPA is still in a good standing and I meet the criteria now. So this way, moving forward into my applications, I feel confident that I've done the background work and I've done the legwork, and now it's just up to me to really sit there and allow people to show people that, I'm willing to be here, I'm willing to do the work. Whereas other students who, maybe have family members, they don't necessarily have to go through all of these steps and this process. So for me, there's a little bit less room for error. And in the back of my mind, it was constantly how to keep improving, how to keep going to the point where, you are considered an exceptional candidate amongst your peers.
Thank you so much, Charlene. And I can vouch that Charlene worked so hard. Her job search is very fresh in my mind because I was her career counselor. And I can tell you that Charlene, she was so independent and so motivated, that it really was so inspiring for me. Every time she came to meet, she had a plan. She knew what she wanted to do, and I think it speaks volumes that, at such a young age you are in the city you want to be in, and you're doing the type of work you'd like to do. So that's great. Thank you for sharing that. Justina, I know it's been a while since you've interviewed because you've been with Judge O'Connor for a while, but can you think back to when you were a student and how, your background and how your interviews and your job search, how that was all rolled into one, how it was all affected by each other?
Yeah. And, thinking about what it was like back then, it wasn't, believe it or not, much different than how Charlene explained her experience. Um, you approach going into these things without really any base of knowledge. So you have no idea the importance of the things that you're doing in law school and what that means. And we talked about our first semesters and our first years and the struggles that we had. And like Charlene, you didn't really understand where you needed to be to fit within the boxes that particular employers were looking for. And I unfortunately didn't have that experience where I bumped in, I saw somebody in the library and got to learn about that. I think I was a little late in the game in terms of understanding some of those things. Just going back to just law review, law journal, moot court, those types of things. No one impressed upon me what the importance of those things were for future employment. And so I remember getting through first year and having those heavy credit bar courses, things that affected your GPA. And if you were not invited into law review, you had an opportunity to write on law review. But even writing, no one said, it's important that you consider that. So I didn't consider it at the outset. I was very overwhelmed and didn't know how to manage, what I was doing and trying to figure out work and being employed with payment for the summer. So it wasn't until that summer and going into my second year that I started to really gather that information and truly understand what that all meant. And similar to Charlene's experience, really kicking it into gear. Okay, I have to get to a place where I am an ideal candidate and I have the opportunity to apply for jobs that I didn't think I could. And so I did moot court as well. I ended up on the board. I improved my GPA, tremendously. I started asking questions, going to office hours, just like you, Charlene, really trying to be involved and participatory in my education so that my grades would improve. And then I just started to really reach out to whoever I could, got involved in extracurricular activities, socializing with peers, understanding what types of jobs I should be looking for, how to set myself up for various things. And, so that was a real challenge. Then you get to the point of you have an interview and you're going to seek out a job, how to even prepare for that and how to what to look like. I had I was thinking on this the other night about my first suit was horrific. It was this polyester horrible thing that I could afford from TJ Maxx. It looked terrible, but it didn't need to be ironed. So it was always very pressed looking because the material was awful. I wore it to every single interview, but I bought it and I made sure that I looked the part and I was presented in the way that I was supposed to be. So when I walked into the room, I felt comfortable. And then similar to Charlene, and I'm sure Christina and others that speak about this, you do your research, you understand the process of interviewing, you find out about who you're interviewing with, the individuals, the culture, the subject matter, all of those things so that you are spot on when a question gets asked because you have no one telling you how to do that. Joanne, you were amazing and everyone in career planning and helping in that process. But until you experience it, you don't really know what you're supposed to be doing until you walk into that room for the first time. But you always have to put in that 110% in a way that others wouldn't have to do. I had a roommate my second year, going into our second year, who had a job already lined up at a very large New York City white shoe law firm, making a boatload of money and had to do very little. And that was hard to see because there was so much more I had to do to get my first job. And, but going through what I went through just informed a lot of, things that I needed to know moving forward and gave me a base of knowledge and understanding. And really drove me to really get myself to a place that I had my job offer when I was a third year. By my first semester, I had my offer, and it was all of those things I did leading up to that point that got me there, and that was exciting for me. But it was embracing and taking those opportunities that you see and seizing them and making yourself stand out and finding ways to overcome those challenges. It's possible. We all are proof of that. So don't give up, work really hard. You all have the potential to do that. Everyone that is on this call that are first generations navigating this process, that potential is there. So it can be a challenge, but lots of resources out here to help.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Christina, can you add a little bit to your interview process, both as a student and after law school?
I sure can. And as a person who primarily does the interviewing for all of our interns here, I can tell you as a prospective employer for those interns what I look for. So to be honest, I don't really focus too much on the transcript. I look at the resume and I look at the cover letter. And I look at the cover letter to make sure that whomever is writing it is writing coherent sentences that make sense, and providing just a little glimpse of who they are as a person, just to make sure they can actually write, right? Because that's important. I will be honest, I spend about 90% of my time focusing on the interview and the interview process. So I think in the interviews, like Charlene and like Justina said, it's really important that you know about where you would be working. I can't tell you how many students come to me and tell me, well, I don't know what you do here. Can you tell me? That's a black mark right on their application right then and there. Because why do you want to work for me if you don't know who I am or what we do here? And remember, this prospective employer wants to be assured that if they were to hire you, you are going to be able to produce for them. Whether it's billable hours, if it's a private firm, whether it's gutting through cases, if it's for government work, whatever the case may be, they want to know that the day that you start, you're going to be able to work and work hard. So I always tell my interns here, what I do for them is we always have them leave here with a writing sample that is a motion, whether it's a motion to dismiss or responsive motion to summary judgment, whatever the case may be, so that when they leave here, they're able to show a prospective employer their writing sample, their motion, and then the decision from the court on their motion or on their responsive papers, because that shows a future employer, hey, look, here's where I was before here, and here's what I can do. So if you hire me tomorrow, I can start banging out these motions and gutting through these files for you. So just remember that. Remember that, yes, they want to know who you are, they want to get to know you, but they really want to know and be assured that you're going to be able to work for them. So however you can convey that message, whether it's like my intern showing the writing sample and the decisions from the court, or in another way, just key in on that. And obviously career services is great in helping you and teaching you about what you should wear and how you should behave in the interviews, proper interview etiquette. You're not bringing in coffee, you're not chewing gum, things like that. They're wonderful about teaching you all of those rules. And don't worry about suits. Like Christina said, I remember when we first had our kids, I was working at the DA's office, and we were so poor because of daycare, right? Because both my husband and I worked, and we were spending $2,500 a month. Can you guys believe that, in daycare? I think I was taking home like $100 from a paycheck. So we had no money whatsoever. And I just had two good suits, a black one and a blue one. And even for jury trials, because that's all I do is litigate, and that's all I've done in my career is litigate. So even for jury trials, I would just mix and match the shirts underneath, right? Blue and black suits are impossible to tell if you're wearing them 5 days a week or no days a week. And they don't have to be expensive suits, just like she said, as long as they look nice and they're pressed. And then eventually, if you're one of those people who wants to wear kind of the fancy suits, the name brand suits, then you can do that down the line when you have the money. But in the beginning, just have a blue one and a black one, and you interchange them. That's the best advice I could give about suits and about the interview process.
Thank you, Christina, and that is great advice. That is great advice. The suits you can mix and match, and people do remember that you are law students. I want to now just pause for a minute and see if we have any questions from our students that are on the call. Does anybody have a question for any of our panelists? Any comments? Anything you'd like to share? I think I just saw a hand go up. Oh, and before Ken said he was giving you guys a round of applause. So that will show you what my technical savvy is right now, that I thought he was raising his hand. Brenda, you have a question.
Yes. Hi, everyone. Can you all hear me? Okay. Thank you so much, first of all, for taking time of your day to talk to us. Yeah, I have a couple of questions, actually. I'm also a first generation everything. So I'm the first one to, complete elementary school, middle school, high school, college, and just higher education in general. So I wanted to ask every one of you, how did Albany Law School help you or support you navigate like your academics, even social life, and career, internship, mainly academics, while you were in law school, through this like imposter syndrome lens, I guess.
Yeah, so if I can take this one, Joanne, I don't know that I was aware of imposter syndrome when I was in law school. I'm sure it was something that was written about, but I didn't really become aware that it was actually a thing until I became a professional and would talk to, in my case, other female attorneys and kind of talk to them about what I was feeling and what I was experiencing. And then I discovered that the feelings that I've had since the very beginning were what we call imposter syndrome. So I think that it's a more prevalent concept today than it was when I was in school all those years ago. I can tell you that without question, I am where I am today, and I've had such a successful career because of my experience at Albany Law. I was able to build relationships with people in the community and people in the ALS community while in law school, and those relationships were what helped me navigate through life from then till now. I'm still very good friends with a person who I met in 2001, who was an employee, a paralegal at the law school. And it's building those relationships and reaching out to people like Joanne and other people at the law school to sit down and say, hey, listen, I'm feeling this. For example, I got an A in contracts, and I've taken or an A in constitutional law, and I've taken other criminal law classes and always ace those classes. But even though I'm starting an internship this summer at the DA's office, I'm not good enough to do that. I don't know anything. How am I ever going to do what they need me to do? Because I'm not qualified to do that. And then that person will sit you down and say, hey, listen, hold up a second. You did so well in all of these courses, right? You're going to do just fine. So it really is like a kind of a therapeutic way that you crush through imposter syndrome, but it's still prevalent. Last week I had a trial. My adversary, he's a lawyer, and he was practicing longer than me. He kept repeatedly telling me when I would make objections that his father was a judge, I guess thus implying that because genetically he has law in his DNA, that he knows that my objections are not founded or without merit, something like that, apparently. And then so you question yourself, because I'm like, oh crap, my mother was a waitress. She barely, I think she got her GED. I don't even know that she graduated high school. And so of course he knows more than me, because his dad's a lawyer and a judge. And so you take that moment and you second guess yourself. And then you just have to take a minute and breathe. You're here for a reason. Your employer put you in that position for a reason. You were hired for that job for a reason. You're in that class for a reason. Other people other than you vouched for your qualifications to be exactly where you are at that moment. And so you have to remember that. It's really just self-soothing and self-actualization. And also, really big part of busting through imposter syndrome is talking to people, your colleagues, other people, mentors, other professionals in your community, and have them kind of sitting down with you and saying, listen, I know you feel like you're not qualified for that DA's job, but you got these grades. I talked to your professor. They said you have, really inherent skills and whatever the case may be. So reaching out to your community is a big part of it. I don't know if that answered your question. I hope it did.
Yes, thank you so much. Appreciate it.
I guess I can also comment on the, in terms of education-wise, academically, how being a first-generation student can be a little bit challenging and how to navigate through that. For me, sometimes it's a little intimidating, right? When it comes to the classroom, you're in the East Wing, you're in the West Wing, and it's a big, big classroom. There's only a certain amount of time, and the professor is going over the subject and you don't quite understand it, but it's intimidating to raise your hand and ask a question, say, can we please just slow down and backtrack and do that? I've been there before, and I really find that the nuggets of information are in the office hours. And I wasn't really comfortable going to my professors so much the first year, but after the first year, I did start going to see my professors during office hours. And I had a really good sense of community with my friends who are also first generation students. And we also had something else in common, just being minority students. And we would just make a schedule to go together. Like, listen, we're gonna go see Professor Redwood on this day at this time, just to make sure that we're able to really just ask what we wanna ask and go over things the way that we want to, and not at the pace that's always just set in the classroom, but something a little bit more specific that can help us understand what's really going on. So just being a first generation student and a minority kind of has its way to interplay in different areas of law school, but in the academic front, I think that's a way that I face some of those challenges.
I have to say, this is Justina, that I agree with Charlene. The academics, it's very intimidating. You're, embarking on this whole new, very new world and understanding how it all works around you. And it's very difficult, even if you're someone who is a competent person who had a very different college experience, because I feel like I felt much more comfortable in the college academic world. Law school was a whole different animal. And, in sitting in class, being called upon, having those professors, and I don't know if they still make you stand and give the answer and have that spotlight and target on you, and feeling like, what if I say something stupid? What if I say something that, doesn't sound right, or, and that's, you have that interplay with just trying to generally understand. And I spent a whole semester living in fear, really, that first semester of law school, being afraid of taking charge of my own education. And when I saw my grades come out, I was so disappointed in what I had seen, because I knew I wasn't that kind of student, but I knew why those grades were not as good as they should have been. And it was because I was trying to manage all of those things that us first generation students have to manage, that others don't always see or know about. And when I recognized that, my second semester, I really started to take charge of the fact that, you know what, I have to put behind me what other people think. I have to really try to find ways to make, this environment work for me and be the support I need. And so I found that support in professors. Some of them I started to really talk to a little bit more, ask questions, do some of the office hours, and feel comfortable explaining where I was coming from and how I felt. I found that in other students and other first generation students. I as well am a minority student, got involved in the LALSA organization, and found, really like-minded people who were having those same experiences. I had always been a self-studier, someone who thought that I could do it on my own, when really study groups and things of that nature were very important in law school. And I didn't understand that. Again, another aspect I didn't know really mattered. I started getting involved in those types of things. So find where you fit that makes the most sense for your learning style, your needs, your wants as a student, as a learning lawyer, and find those pieces at the law school that will support that. They're there. And if you don't know them, automatically seek them out, ask some questions, contact some of us. We can point you in some of those directions. But there are wonderful, wonderful people at the law school that work there, both staff members, the professors that you're going to encounter. Those resources will be really invaluable to you in trying to deal with some of those challenges, really academically getting through those pieces. And then the social part, you mentioned socially and sort of that kind of thing. Get involved. Find what interests you, what you want to know more about, what makes you curious about the law. See if there's a group at the law school. Attend a meeting. You may go to one and say, I thought I'd like this, not for me. If you have those opportunities, embrace them, get involved in that way. Whatever career planning is doing, and you're doing that already by being involved in this program, all of you that are sitting here and listening, and those of you that will listen, you're already taking charge of that. Learn about programs like this, get involved in those. If you have opportunities to get into mentorship programs, I've done the alumni and mentoring program. I would like to see more of that in all different ways. I'd love to see that in the first generation category, that they put us together and find our connections so we can mentor. Do those types of things. And I think you will find your place, and you will find that support, that network, whatever you need in all parts of that law school experience. It's available. It's just finding it. And once you do, you will be better for it.
Thank you so much, Justina. I just want to be respectful of our panelists' time. Does anybody have any last minute questions that they'd like to ask? Well, before I thank our panelists, I feel like this is just the beginning of the conversation. We had several more questions that we didn't get a chance to ask because it's such an important topic. And for the students on this panel, please reach out to your career counselor, to myself, to anyone on this call, because we really would like to help you. And what I've been hearing from our panelists is that they found their people, and then eventually they found their voices. And there's lots of people out there who are experiencing what you're experiencing, and maybe even forming a student group on first generation law students and doing.
That's a great idea. That's a great idea.
So that
and open it up to community members like us, because I would love to go to that and just sit around, have a coffee and just be there to help kids navigate some of these things, some of these issues as they come up.
Absolutely. And Charlene, when you said you got a group of people together and you went to see Professor Wedgwood together because you felt as though that you were in your comfort zone and that you could ask the question and hear it at the pace that you wanted to hear it. So for students on the call, please don't hesitate to reach out, and we will continue this conversation, I can promise you, because I do think it's important, and I do think we've just started to touch the surface on it. Christina, Charlene, Justina, I cannot thank you enough. I was looking at some of the comments in the chat that this was so inspiring, and they appreciated your honesty and your ability to be so real with your story. So thank you so much to all of you for joining us today.
Great. Thank you.
Joanne.
You're welcome. And thank you, Joanne. And please, I'm on my phone, so I apologize. I didn't get a chance to see all of your faces, and I couldn't really participate in the chat. But if Joanne, please share my contact information. I am happy to have that to get into whoever needs it and wants to reach out.
Will do.
Same sentiments. And if you do start a student group, let me know, because I'd love to attend, to be there as a resource. That's all we really want, you guys. We just want to be able to help you and give back in a way we felt was given to us. We all share that sense of community spirit and community service. Obviously I've worked for the government my entire life, so I have a really strong sense of community service and community spirit. So just reach out to us, you guys. We're here to help.
Thank you so much. I hope everyone has a fantastic day, and I look forward to seeing the students soon in the near future, but hopefully get a chance to enjoy your summer vacations.
And thank you, Joanne, for setting all of this up. You are the glue, as always, as you have been for all of these years. You are the glue. So thank you.
Thank you, Christina.
Thank you, Meg.
Thank you all.
Bye.
Take care.